Hi everybody. In this video we're going to go over how to construct a frequency table, a relative frequency table, bar charts, and pie charts. So to start, we're going to construct this frequency table for the Macintosh Auto Group dataset. So if you open up the Excel Macintosh Auto Group file, you'll see that it looks like this. So right here in these columns we have our data. The first column is the location, the second column is the age of the buyer, the profit made on each vehicle, the type of vehicle sold, and how many previous purchases were made by the buyer. Now each row represents one sale. So for example, this row right here, we have one sale that was made at the Erie location. The buyer was 59 years old. They'd have made a profit of about $4,000. The type of vehicle sold was a truck, and the buyer had purchased one previous vehicle from the dealership. Now what we want to do is construct this frequency table that we have right here. Now this part of it is a frequency table, and then this part right over here is our relative frequency table right here. So we're going to construct the frequency table first. So what we have to do is we have to count how many sales were made in Berks, Chester, Delaware, Erie, and Sullivan. And that's what these numbers right here represent. Now to do that, the easiest thing to do is to sort the data over here so we can count how many sales were made by each dealer. So to sort a data set, there are different ways to do it. I'll show you one way to do it. We have right here our header row. That's just a description of what's in each column. So if we highlight the header row like this, and then we go over to click on the Home tab, and then we go over to Sort and Filter, click on that, and go down to Filter. Click on the filter, and now you see these little arrows, these drop-down arrows appear in the header row. So if we click on one of these, for example, if we want to sort by the location, we click on that little down arrow, and then we can sort it from A to Z, or from Z to A. If it were numbers, like over here the age of the buyer, and we clicked on it, we could sort from the largest to the smallest number, or the smallest to the largest. So if we click on this drop-down arrow right here for the location column, and we click on Sort A to Z, now you see all of our data has been sorted. And all the other rows, or columns rather, were sorted at the same time, so it didn't mix up our data set. Now what we can do is just count how many sales were made in Berks, Chester, Delaware, Erie, and Sullivan, and that'll give us these numbers right here. So for the number of sales made in Berks, if we scroll down, we see that the last Berks sale corresponds to row number 42. Now if we go up here, we see we had a header row first, so if we subtract 42 minus 1, that gives us how many sales were made in Berks. So 42 minus 1 is, of course, 41. So let's create this down here if you're following along. So we'll just copy this right down here. And so we have determined that 41 cars were sold in Berks. Now for the Chester, we can go down here, and we just have to note that the last Berks sale right here that we have listed is in row number 42. And if we scroll all the way down to the last Chester sale, that is in row 91. So if we go 91 minus 42, that will tell us how many sales were made in Chester. So if we just type in here 91 minus 42, of course that's going to be 49. So we can put that right here. For the number of Delaware sales, we go down here and we see that the last Chester here was in row number 91, and then the Delaware start. So if we go down to the last Delaware here, that is in row number 142. So the number of Delaware sales is going to be 142 minus 91, and so that's 51. So we'll go up here, we'll put that right here, 51. And then we do the same thing for Erie. So if we go down here, the last Delaware row was 142. Now to just count the Eries, we can go down to 175. And so the number of Erie sales, let's see, that was 142 up here. So it's going to be equals 175 minus 142. And we get 33. And then finally Sullivan. Let's see, the last Erie was 175, and Sullivan we go down to 201, so that's going to be minus 175. 201 minus 175 is 26. So then we see here 26 cars were sold at the Sullivan dealership, and there we go. We have our frequency table, and we'll just call this the number sold. And then we can put the total down here. Now if we add all these up, we should have 200. Now to do that, we can go equals sum, and you notice a little choice box appears here, so we can select the function we want. We want sum, hit the tab key, and then we can highlight these, hit the close parenthesis, and we get 200. Of course, you could also just add those up by hand and get 200 as well. But using the formula, the Excel formulas that are built into it, is a nice feature. So once again, that was equals sum. And you notice this is I11. That is referencing this cell right here with the 41 in it. Notice we have the colon there. And then I15, that's where the 26 is located. And the colon tells Excel to sum everything between the 41 and the 26. And there you go. We have now constructed our frequency table just like we have up here. And if you want, you can clean it up a little bit. You can, make the header row here bold if you like, and so on. Now let's create our relative frequency table. Now the relative frequency table is going to give us the percent of all sales that were made at each dealership. So we have to find out 41 is what percent of the total sales. Well, to find that, we take 41 and divide by 200. So what we're going to put right here is going to be equals. We could type in 41 divide by 200 by hand, or we can use cell references. 41 is in cell I11, so if I type I11, that'll reference the number 41. And then I divide that by what is in cell I16. Now I'm going to put dollar signs in front of the I16 so that when I copy this down, the I16, the 200, will not get changed when I copy that formula down. Now you see right here I have 0.205 listed. If I want that as a out of 100%, let me change that. So to edit that, I'm going to hit F2 and I'm going to multiply that by 100. There you go. So now I have 20.5 and that's a percent. So I can put my percent of total right here. Alright, so once again that formula was I11 divided by $I, $16 times 100, where the I11 is referencing the number 41 and the I16 is referencing the total number of sales, which is 200. Now when I copy this formula down, because I had the dollar signs here, this portion of the formula will not get changed when I copy downward. The I11 will get changed. So when I copy this formula down to the next cell below it, the I11 will become I12. And let's see that in action. So if we grab the little fill handle here, there are different ways you can copy. You can either do Control C and Control V, or you can grab the little fill handle. That's this little rectangle right here. It might be a little hard to see. Just grab that with the mouse and drag down. And there we go. So we see that Chester, as a percent of total sales, it sold 24.5% of all vehicles. And once again, notice if I look at the formula that's in this cell right here, you notice it is I12 divided by $I, $16. So the $I, $16, that did not change when I copied downward, but the I11 did change to I12. And then we can add all of these up just to make sure that we really do have 100%. And then if I just highlight these cells, they automatically get placed in the sum formula. Close the parenthesis off, hit enter, and there we go. So they do sum up to 100%, as they should. And so there you go. We have constructed our frequency table and our relative frequency table. And by the way, if you want these centered, you can just highlight them and go up here and hit the center. There you go. Now all the numbers are centered nicely. And the same thing with these text values here if we wanted them to be centered. And there we go. Now let's take a look at creating a bar chart as we have pictured right here. So now we're going to create this bar chart showing the frequencies, a graphical representation of the number of cars sold by each dealership. So to create a bar chart, what we're going to do is highlight our frequencies right here, and then we're going to go up to click on the Insert tab right here, and that'll bring up the Insert ribbon. And if we go right over here to this icon right here, click on that, and then just go down to a 2D bar chart. And right there is our bar chart representing the frequencies. Now you see we have the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 down here. We'll change those in a second. You see, let me move this a little bit here and make it a little smaller. The number 1 is really the Berks, number 2 is Chester, number 3 is Delaware, 4 is Erie, 5 is Sullivan, and you see Berks sold 41 cars, and you see the height of this bar is 41. Chester sold 49, and you see the height of this bar is 49. So this gives a graphical representation of the number of sales made by each dealership. Now let's change these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to Berks, Chester, Delaware, Erie, and Sullivan. So to do that, click on the chart that you just created. And when you do that, you see the Chart Tools tab appear up here. So we have two additional ribbon tabs to click here, the Design and the Format. So click on the Design, and what we're going to do is click on the Select Data. So we're going to change these numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to Berks through Sullivan. So click on the Select Data, and you see this box appear. Now you see we have the horizontal axis labels listed right here. We can change those from currently they're at 1 through 5 if we click on the Edit button right here, and we'll highlight the Berks, Chester, Delaware, Erie, and Sullivan values. Then click OK, and click OK again. And you see right here now we have the words listed below each bar, which is exactly what we want. And if you want, you can change the chart title, to whatever you want. You can add axis labels, like we can add an axis label for the y-axis here. What we can do is click on the chart, go up here to add a chart element. That's under the Design tab. And let's see, we want axis titles. We want a vertical axis title. There we go. So once again, you click on Add a Chart Element, Axis Titles, Primary Vertical, and it'll create one there for you. Then we can change it to maybe just number of sales. And we could add a label down here for these. And there we go. You can pretty this chart up a little bit. There's lots of things you can do with it. One thing I like to do is change the width of these bars so they look a little nicer. So if you right-click on one of the bars somewhere, see how I right-clicked and it brought up this selection box here, and click on Format Data Series, you'll see a little sidebar appear over here. And these have lots of options you can do with respect to colors of the chart, background colors and background pattern fills and all types of stuff you can do with this. I'll let you explore it. But one thing we can do is change the gap width. I like to make that about 10 or so. And there we go. You can even do some things come in handy, like if I click on the labels, the x-axis labels, Berks through Sullivan, we can go up here and click on the text options, and then click on that little text box right there, and we can angle those a little bit. You see how I'm angling them right now. Sometimes that comes in handy when things are cramped along the x-axis. So once again, how I did that is I just clicked on the x-axis here, went up to text options, clicked on that little text box icon right there, and then just used the custom angle. I just changed that number to, let's see, right now I have it set at 40 degrees. And so there you go. That's a very nice bar chart that gives us a graphical representation for the number of sales made by each dealership. We can also create a relative frequency bar chart if, instead of using the number sold, we use the percents right here. And you'll notice that the bar chart will look exactly the same. So if we highlight the percents right here, and then go up and insert, and we go over to our little histogram icon right here, And you see this chart right here, if I resize it, now our relative frequency chart and our frequency bar chart, they actually will look exactly the same, except over here for our frequency bar chart, the y-axis represents the total number of sales made, and over here for our relative frequency bar chart, the y-axis values here represent the percent of total sales. So for example, if I move that chart over, you see Berks sold 20.5% of all vehicles, and you see the height of this bar right here is 20.5. And we can change this chart just like we did the previous one. We can change the x-axis values to Berks to Sullivan. So if we just go up here to select data and edit the horizontal axis labels, just change those like this, highlight those, click OK. And then we can edit these. We'll angle these a little bit just like we did the other one. So if I just click on, highlight the x-axis values, right click, format axis, and click on the text options, text box, and there we go. I can angle that to -40 degrees like the other one. And then we can change the gap width. Just right click on one of the bars, format data series, and then I'll change the gap width to 10% like the other one. And we can change our chart title to %. Sales like that. And let's see, let's just add a we'll add a axis label there. And we could also add a y-axis label. Click on the chart. And there we go. And you see these two charts do actually look exactly the same. And that will always be the case. Your frequency chart and relative frequency chart will always look exactly the same, except the y-axis for each will have different values. Over here the y-axis represents the number of sales. Over here it represents the percent of sales. But the height of the bars all look the same relative to each other. And so there you go. So we have now constructed these two charts right here, showing the frequency and relative frequencies of the auto sales for each dealership. Now we can construct a pie chart. So here we are back at our data set again. So we want to create a pie chart. So we'll go over here and highlight our percent of total sales numbers. And then we'll go up here to Insert, click on the Insert tab. And we'll go over here to our pie chart icon right here. Click on that. And then we want to insert a 2D pie chart. Click on it. And there you go, we have our pie chart for the percent of sales. Now we need to clean this up a little bit. We want to change the numbers 1 through 5 to Berks through Sullivan. So if we click on our chart and then go up here to Chart Tools, Design, make sure that's highlighted, select Data, and then change the horizontal axis labels. Click on Edit, and then just highlight Berks through Sullivan, click on OK, and then OK again. And there you go. So now you have a some color references for the slices of each pie, which dealership they correspond to. Now, if you want the actual numbers to appear in your pie chart, what you can do is this. Right-click on one of the slices, and then you see this Add Data Label selection. Go over to the little arrow and click Add Data Labels. And now you see the percents appearing in here. And then you can change your chart title if you like. You can edit the color of these slices just by clicking on right-clicking and then selecting Format Data Series. You see your little sidebar appears over here. You can change the coloring of these and the spacing and so on. And that's how we construct a basic pie chart. Now, if you did want the percents to appear in these pie slices, like we have right here, you see how we have the percents appearing in here. That's a little bit of extra work. What you would have to do is format these cells as percents. Now, that would require us to get rid of the 100. Let me show you there. So if I get rid of the 100, that'll change it to 0.205, and then I just drag that down. Okay, so now, these are proportions instead of percents. And now what I want to do is format all of these cells as percents. So if I highlight them, right-click, and select Format Cells right here, and then select Number, and go down to Percentage, and then it lets me choose the number of decimal places I want. We'll just select 1 decimal place, and then click OK. Now you see the percents appear here, and you see percents appearing over here. That's not actually necessary for what we're doing in the course. That's just some formalities that you don't really need to do, but if you want to make your pie chart look pretty, you can do that. And so that concludes this lesson on how to construct frequency tables, relative frequency tables, bar charts, and pie charts.